Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today with Anthony. Today's session is going to be around his new publication, The Negativity Fast. We're going to walk through some of those tidbits from the book, strategies to stay resilient in sales and in life. I also wanted to give a huge congrats to Anthony because the book is now a US bestseller. So huge achievement there. Really, really excited to see that. I wanted to open things up and ask, this Negativity Fast book concept methodology is so different from what you've previously written and published about. And so I'm sure you could talk endlessly today about what inspired you to write this book, but could you provide some of that context? You've been a sales professional for a long time. So why was this topic really relevant for you?
First, let me just give you my number on this one. For me, it's E. What the data says, I think it came from HubSpot, that about 89% of salespeople say that they're burned out. So that's a lot, that's a huge number. And I think between the pandemic and all the things that were going on, I think people would be burnt out. I think that makes sense because it was so stressful for a long time when the economy shut down and all of those sort of things. Why I decided to write this was because I did this for me. So I did this just for me because I was angry, I was political, I was not happy, and I didn't feel good. And I was sitting down across from one of my law school professors at the time, and he said, "You're really angry and you get upset by all these things that are going on in the world, and you should just let all that go." That's terrible advice. Like, just let it go. Because how do you know how to do that? Like, how do I let these things go? And I just had a friend of mine ask me, like, how do you let that stuff go? You got to let it go. But what I did is I first got rid of everything political in my life. I turned off any cable news shows, regular news. I wouldn't watch any of that. I didn't listen to any radio. And instead, I just looked at The Economist because it's very fair and balanced kind of a thing. That was the only thing that I was actually taking in at that time. So I decided I'm going to get rid of all these sources for 30 days. Then I'll see how I feel. Yeah. At 30 days, I felt pretty good. And I thought, well, I should do that again because it feels pretty good not to have all this negativity. So then I did it for another 30 days. And then at the end of that, so that's 60 days, I realized I got rid of the negativity, but I didn't put any positivity in to replace it. And then I thought, well, I should do this one more time, and I should just take in all the positive things that I could find and make that, like, I'm going to try to force out the negativity by putting so much positivity into this part right here, right? Yeah. And after that, I just kept going. I mean, I still don't watch any of the television shows. My wife will ask me, "Did you see that story today?" I didn't see it. And she's like, "How could you not have seen that?" I'm not paying attention to that. And guess what? It went on without me anyway. And when I tell people to give up the politics and all the news, the first thing they say is, "How am I going to know what's going on?" All your negative friends are going to tell you. You don't have to worry about it. They're going to make sure you know.
Yeah. That's definitely, my mom is definitely an avid watcher of not politics, but news. And so anytime, she's the same way, she'll ask, "Hey, did you see X or Y?" And I go, "Nope," but I hear it from her. So
yeah, you're going to hear it from somebody. I decided to write this because I thought it was the right time to give people this book, because I think people are more stressed. I think they're more anxious. I think they're more uncertain about the future, which, if you didn't see this sometime very recent time, OpenAI said that they are going to start looking at artificial general intelligence, so AGI, which means our AI will be smarter than we are. And they're actively working on that right now. So the rate of change in our environment continues to speed up over time. And a whole bunch of people have commented on just how stressful it is when you can't keep up with the rate of change in the environment. So
Yeah.
I thought, this is what we can do. And Jeb introduced me to his publisher, and I said, I will do this, but I really want to write a book called The Negativity Fast, and I've already done all the work, and they said, we would love to do that book with you. So that's how it got done.
Great. Well, thank you for providing some of that context. And as we kind of move into the bulk of today's conversation, you touched on just like replacing with positivity and burnout. You mentioned burnout was a big item for not just sellers, but I'm sure professionals in general right now. Could you kind of elaborate on why this is relevant for sales teams, companies as a whole? Sort of what are the main impacts of negativity on sales teams other than burnout?
So let me describe two different types of people, okay? So if you go into the accounting department at ZoomInfo, and they'll be doing their work, they'll be putting things in spreadsheets, taking care of everything, but there's not a competitor trying to take their work away from them. They work for ZoomInfo, and there's nobody doing that. In sales, we have clients that we have to take care of. We have to go out and win deals. We have competitors trying to take our clients while we're trying to take their clients. We get the word no more often than most people do. And I think all of these things, a lot of these things are negative to the salesperson, even though I don't believe that anybody's actually being rejected. They would say, I got rejected. You were not rejected. Your value proposition for a meeting was what was rejected. They don't know you well enough to say, Becca, I would buy from anybody but you. They never say that because they don't know you. They don't know the salesperson. They're just trying to protect their time. So that's what they're trying to do. So it does feel negative. And then on your list, you had it. Losing deals, losing clients, having conflict with your clients and having to solve problems. All of these things are not fun, but you do have to be able to do them. So I think of all the groups of people, leaders and salespeople have more of that conflict and more of that challenge than a lot of other people's roles in business.
Yeah, most definitely. And also, I wanted to kind of touch on, we had all those responses in the poll, and so you kind of covered off on some of those. I had put complaining or complaints as one of the options for someone in our audience today to select from. And I remember when reading your book, in one of the chapters, you dove into the effects of complaining, not just the person themselves maybe complaining, but what they're hearing around them in their environment. And so could you kind of elaborate on what is complaining really about, and how does it kind of impact us kind of from that personal and professional setting?
I learned something after I wrote this book about complaining that I wish I would have known when I wrote the book, because I didn't know. But I learned something else. If you are a complainer, you will have more stress, you will have more anxiety, you'll have a greater chance of having depression. You will have all kinds of bad things happen in your relationships by being a complainer. You can also, at the workplace, cause other people to start complaining and start a toxic culture. So there's a whole bunch of bad things happening. And at some point, you might have a victim mentality because of your complaining. And so all of these things are terrible. But the one that really got me, and I didn't know this when I wrote the book, but if I get to do another version of this, I will put it in. If you complain a lot, like if you're just a chronic complainer, first off, stop that. Okay, but now let me tell you why. And when I tell you this, I think I can scare you enough that you'll stop complaining. Let's see if I can do this to this group of people here. I lost a piece of my brain. I had 2 brain surgeries, so I lost a piece. If you complain continuously and you're a chronic complainer, your hippocampus, which is responsible for your intelligent thinking, shrinks. And the more you complain, the more that that part of your brain shrinks, and it makes hard for you to create a solution to whatever you're complaining about. And when I thought that, I'm like, I'm already missing part of my brain. I don't want to shrink any other parts of my brain. And so I hope I'm scaring you and you're like, I don't even know where my hippocampus is, but it sounds important, right?
Yeah.
So don't shrink that thing. Don't shrink any part of your brain if you can stop it. So I didn't know that when I wrote the book, but complaining is bad for you. It's also bad for your physical health. So your physical health, it can have inflammation things, it can have things about heart issues, and all of the research on this is in the book. So anything that I claim here, I have documented every claim that I have. So when you hear something like that, you're like, wow, all those bad things just from complaining. But there is one good thing about complaining. It does get people focused on something's not right, we should do something about it. But they stop complaining and then they go figure out what the solution is.
Yeah. No, definitely. And thanks for walking through some of the effects of complaining as well. While you were talking, I was sort of thinking on complaining, like sellers and account managers probably encounter that a lot from prospects. And so it's hard for them to sort of do a negativity fast to like avoid complaining from that standpoint. So could you offer like one tip if, they are facing a lot of that from a client, how to sort of like take them out of that state that the complaining might put them in?
Yeah, you're always going to have clients that have problems, and they're always going to have some complaints that they need something to be better. The best strategy that I know is to listen very carefully and then say, here's something that we can do about this one that you're complaining about. Here's what we could do about this. But let's make sure that we get a good plan together, and I will be responsible for making sure that we turn these things around. Even though the salesperson might not be the one that's doing it, but the salesperson sold that person. So I'm going to be responsible for the outcomes, even though my team's going to do the stuff that needs to get done for them to be better. I would always take a complaint as a chance to do better with that client, because that's really what they're asking you to do, is to help me get the better result that I need. And so I think that's our obligation. And whenever I see a salesperson, avoid taking the phone call from an angry client. I think the client is going to go somewhere else in the future. Like, you're not going to be here with me when we have this problem, then I'll probably go somewhere else.
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks for kind of diving into that a bit. We have one more poll, Anthony, for our audience. So we were curious, if you're a sales leader, how do you currently motivate your teams? Or if you're not a sales leader, that's okay. We want to know, how does your current leader typically motivate you to perform and keep you positive, even in the midst of all this negativity going on in the sales realm and around you? So we put some options up here. And again, if none of these hit the mark for you, please select other and throw that in the chat. But Anthony, let's kind of move on here to some of the next pieces. So we've explored a lot of the various impacts of negativity previously, but could you kind of elaborate on what types of negativity might a sales leader encounter versus an individual salesperson? And how can leaders implement a more positive environment for their sales team to thrive?
This is one of the things that I think, if every sales manager and sales leader looked at this list right here, some of those people, not very many, I'm going to say maybe 5%, are motivated by money. And you know how you know they're motivated by money? They have a lot of money. That's what they're working for. They want the money. When you try to give a money incentive to somebody who needs recognition and praise and gratitude, you're not giving that person what they need. So you need to know what they really want so you can do that. clear communication and setting expectations. I just read a study where about 47% of salespeople are considering moving from their job because they don't have that clear communication or those expectations. So they're not sure what they're supposed to do. Celebrating wins when they happen, that should be something that's just automatic for every sales manager and sales leader. I mean, what's better than getting a win? I mean, that's it. So those should be celebrated right away. And support in, when you have a supportive sales manager, your life is way better. I mean, just getting the coaching, a sounding board, help when you get stuck on a deal, all of those things. So I would say you have to know your team well enough to know what really does motivate them. Different people are motivated by different things.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you calling that out, because I think in some ways incentives or like helping teams perform can always be really one, like single silo, just one thing. But I appreciate how you kind of outlined how everyone needs a different type of positive motivation there. Yeah, for sure. And as we're going to kind of move on here to the fact that part of this webinar title is about rejection and being resilient around that. And that is such a common thing in the sales realm, right? Like a day-to-day. And I can imagine, I'm not a salesperson, but I can imagine that at some points when you're facing this rejection so constantly, it can feel innately personal. And so I think you kind of touched on this earlier a few minutes back, but how should sellers look at rejection? And do you have any tips on sort of an easy place to start that could help take them out of that negative state they might be in with all that rejection?
I think the best strategy for that, well, let me give you two strategies. The first one is, and this is probably for new salespeople more than people that have some time in sales. If you're new, you're going to get a lot of no's because you have to make a lot of phone calls, and you're going to get a lot of no's when you do that. You're going to have almost none of your emails read. So that's going to be a problem for you too. And you might feel bad about that, but here's what I want you to do. After you do this for a certain period of time, and it won't be the same time for everybody, you will be desensitized to the no. And when somebody says no, after you've heard so many no's, the no just goes away. Like it's not even a consideration. You're like, they said no today. I'm going to call them back in 2 weeks. I'm going to call them back 3 weeks after that. And I'm going to keep going until they eventually give me a yes. But you do have to have some time to be desensitized. So I was desensitized when I was 15. And so after that, it was like, okay, some people are going to say no, it's fine. Some other people said yes, though. So that's fine too. The other side of this, though, when you talk about people who have done this for a long time, it's probably more of a burnout issue. Like there's a lot of no's right now. I mean, 2023 has been very, very compressed because of the Fed and the economic situation that we were in with inflation. And that's probably more of a burnout. I think most of the time when people have been in sales for a long time, they're not worried about the rejection at all. It doesn't do anything to them. Just because they've been desensitized so long, they're not very worried about a no.
No, that's really interesting. Because when I was reading your book too, I really liked for someone who might not be desensitized to it, say someone a little earlier in their sales career. I like how you talked about positive self-talk, things that you would say to yourself, and also the fact that you talked about doing something supportive for someone else to kind of like help take your mind off of that. Those were some really great advice pieces that I liked from your chapter there. And I wanted to also go off of that. So if you're doing something kind for someone else, how do those types of activities sort of play out day to day in the context of sales? And is there any other ingredients that you'd like to kind of elaborate on that help take you out of that negative state?
Well, there's a couple strategies here that'll be really helpful for salespeople. So the best thing to do if you really want to have a really good mindset and you want to get rid of the negativity and feel a lot better and feel a lot more positive, you got to start with gratitude. Gratitude is just so powerful. Is what caused me to cite this book, is because I was sharing something with the editor and they said, can you support all of these things that you say gratitude does? And I'm like, yeah, I read all the papers. I know that they can do this. It will reduce your stress, reduce your anxiety, reduce your depression, get rid of inflammation in your body, make your immune system much happier and better for you. You'll have better cognitive function. Like the list keeps going on and you see so many of these and you're like, how could gratitude do so much work like this? And no one told you this in like 7th grade, right? No one told you this. And now you're a grown up and you're like, wow, somebody should have told me this. The easiest thing to do is Martin Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology. What you would do is at the end of every day, you'll write down 3 things that went well for you today and why they went well for you. If you do that for 2 weeks, Seligman, his research said it's more powerful than pharmaceuticals and it's more powerful than psychoanalysis. If you would just do those things. Now, I would recommend you do that in a journal so you can look back over like the month and say, every day, lots of good things happen to me. And then that will start to help you feel a whole lot better. It's one of the most powerful. The second thing is reframing negative events. So I talked about my brain surgeons, but let me tell you about you. So you lose a deal. Okay, so you lost it. It's only a loss if you didn't learn something. And if you learned something, it's not a loss at all. It means I'm going to try again later and I'm going to have a better strategy because now I tried this and I know this doesn't work. So now I can try this next thing. And so you just have to reframe these and say, there's not a loss here for me. I still have an opportunity to win that client in the future. And now I'm going to adjust what I did to see if I can get another shot at this. And that's a very, very important thing to be able to do as a human, is just reframe these things. I have a logo that's a hydra. And the reason it's a hydra is because if you chop off one of the hydra's head, it grows 2 back. And so you get stronger when something negative happens to you. If you decide to take the learning from it. If you take the learning, you're better off than you were before. So that is another good practice for salespeople and sales managers and leaders, because they share those losses, right?
Right.
So the salesperson lost the deal, which means the company lost the deal.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. I like how you talk about writing the 3 things that went well. I remember actually talking to my husband about that part when I got to that part of the book, and we were just like going on a walk, because I'm such an in the moment person. I'm sure I'm not the only one who is, but to your point, I like how you mentioned being able to go back if you journal it and see it, a month ago, 2 months ago, because right now for me, I live so much in like today, this moment, that you forget about a lot of those. So it's nice, to your point, to like have those to kind of look back on.
I did this in one of my businesses where we put it in a chat together. And I thought, well, that'll last for like 2 days. Still going. They're still going. Everybody supports each other's blessings. They just comment on it, put little stars and hearts and everything around it. It's amazing. People want to be more positive.
Most definitely. Yeah, my manager here, she, every Friday we do that on our team. We write like a few things that went really well, like highlights, and then a couple lowlights. So yeah, definitely applicable.
I hope I make your highlight reel.
Always. Yes. No, I love partnering with you on stuff, and you're just an awesome human. So definitely a highlight. And we're going to kind of switch gears here just a bit. I'm trying to keep an eye on time for our audience here, but I wish we had way more time, obviously, to go into depth on the negativity fast methodology because it really is so fascinating. But Anthony, could you sort of start with what you call the triggers and negativity and why that's sort of a important step of the process?
Oh yeah, identifying your triggers. So let me tell you the truth about this book. So it doesn't say anything about this in the book, but I will tell you the first 11 chapters are really about me helping you understand that you trigger yourself. And people don't know that. They think this other person, they cut me off. No, it's your belief about why they cut you off that causes you to feel negative. And I've done this long enough now. I've done this with big groups 2 times, so I know what they think. Like, they trigger me. Nope, you trigger you. So if you learn that, that's the thing. But you need to know what the real triggers are for you. Like, if you're really political and you're watching political stuff, you turn the TV on, you're being triggered because that's what news is like now today, right? Yeah. That's what it is. If there are things in your life that trigger you, you have to figure some way out to do. I am very sensitive to loud noises. I'm just sensitive to it. It's a trigger for me. People who chew with their mouth open, trigger for me. Yeah. There's a number of things, but it's not really them. It's me. Yeah. Focusing on that. And I just carry around headphones with me, noise canceling. So if I'm somewhere and I have to do something, I can put the headphones on. So you have to start solving your own problems. But when you have a number of things that are triggers for you, you have to start thinking about how many of these things can I get rid of? So if you're in Ohio like me and the sky is gray for maybe 4 or 5 months and you're like, I don't really like that. Well, you can't do anything about the sky. Yeah. It's going to do what it does. And you're just going to have to figure out, like, the rain is really important. Winter's important. This is how it goes. It's hard for some people to do that. But whatever those triggers are, you want to start trying to get rid of anything that is going to cause you to be more negative than positive, and then focus your time and your energy on what is positive. You're here for 4,000 weeks or so. Some people get more. Some people get less. We don't even know how many weeks we get, but you should take, let me say one thing about gratitude too, and complaining. I'll talk about both of those. When you complain, like, it's really good here. I just wanted you to know before we leave, like, it's really good here. You ever have ice cream? It's pretty good, right?
Oh, amazing.
Pizza?
Big ice cream fan.
Yeah. Yeah. Cats?
Oh,
you like cats? Yeah, see, cats are good, right? Yeah. I mean, the people that love you and that you love, they're all right here. You want to stay here. It's a good place, right? So I would say try to get rid of the complaining. Try to be more grateful and look at what you learn from every negative thing that happens to you that could actually be a lesson. And then do your very best to stay off of the things that cause you to be more negative than positive. And if you do that, you will start to feel a lot better. I feel so much better. I'm not angry at all. I'm not upset with anything. There's a whole bunch of things going on in the world that I wish they weren't going on, but there's not anything that I can do about them except for hope that something happens and all these things end eventually, and hopefully sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, we can go help other people by being positive. And you mentioned that. I normally buy all the dogs from the Delaware County dog place. What is it? So they call it Humane Society. I buy all the dogs. And I do that because I'm like a bail bondsman for dogs. Like, they're in jail. I got to help them get out. So I show up and I give them money. Last year, I'll tell this story very quickly. Last year when I did this, I bought 9 dogs. And they said, would you take a picture with this dog? It's a giant pit bull. I mean, and it is a really aggressive one, like not aggressive, mean, like just very, is moving around and very happy somebody's paying attention to him. No. And when they did that, they said, can we take a picture of you? And I said, sure. They took a picture. They put the picture up on their website, and a woman saw it and she read the story that I just came in and paid for the dogs.
Yeah.
She went in the next day and she bought all of the cats. That had to be like 46 million cats. I don't know how many are in a humane society, but they're full of cats.
Yeah.
And she went in and bought all of them. And then two of my friends saw that post and they said, we can just go buy the dogs or the animals and we don't have to take them home. And
Right.
I said, they need the money. They're going to take your money. Just go in. And so those two groups went in and bought a bunch of animals themselves. So this is called Helpers High.
Okay.
I didn't know what that was until I started doing the research on what it is when we go and do something for somebody else. But we get as much out of it as they do. So if you're really negative, go find somebody that needs some help.
Yeah. No, I remember reading that anecdote about the buying the dogs. And I had the same reaction as your other friends. They're like, wait, you can just like pay for the adoption fee and all that. So I thought that was really neat. But thanks for sharing some of that. And I think too, with triggers, it was really helpful for me to do that activity in the book that you have at the end of every chapter, where it's like, sit down and really reflect on what those are for you. Because again, I am a more in the moment person. So I know what that trigger is in that moment, but 1 or 2 days later, I probably forget about it until it pops back up again. So I highly just recommend our audience to sort of start thinking about those and how those impact you. But I want to keep an eye on time. I think we have time for just one more wrap up here. But, I wish we had more time to go through more of the methodology. But Anthony, any other tips sort of for our audience who's with us today on the negativity fast in general, after you identify the triggers and you start replacing some of these with gratitude and positivity, what are some other portions that they should really focus on?
I think because there's so much conflict in business and there's so many problems in business, I think if you were to sit down and say, we need to do this as a team and just try to all be very positive and supportive of each other, stop complaining, start being more grateful for the good things that do happen to us all the time, I think that would help a team feel a whole lot better, especially when I shared with the group that there's 89% of salespeople that said they were burnt out. So we need to do something for that. And to do that, I think try to get them to be more positive than negative. And I think that can turn around really quickly.
Yeah, for sure. We are now going to go into our Q&A with Anthony. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us again today. Anthony, we caught lots of questions, so we're going to go ahead and get through as many of these as we can. I wanted to start out, I saw a couple different questions sort of roll in around this similar theme. So I'm just going to read out one of them, Anthony, but Andrew asked, what happens if your prospect or customer no-shows? This has been happening to me constantly and is a huge source of negativity. What would be a good next step for connecting and reaching back out?
Okay, so let's start with why somebody will ghost you. One of the reasons that they might ghost you is simply because they didn't get value in a first meeting. So in the first meeting, one of the things that we recommend is that you use an executive briefing so you can do a couple things. Like the first thing it would do for you is it would allow you to create value for the client very quickly once you sit down across from them in discovery. When they do go dark on you, I think you have to go back and just say, listen, I want to restart where we were. I think that there was some additional value that you needed from us that we might not have given you. And I've been thinking about this and I want to ask you for a do-over. And don't be afraid to ever ask for a do-over. I've asked for dozens of do-overs. I've left actual conversations with clients, got in the car and called them because I thought that I didn't do something that I needed to do. So I would tell you, don't be negative about it because the negativity will make it actually even more negative for you. Just say, I'm going to live long enough to get this client, so I'm going to keep going after them. Part of this is just patient, professional, persistent, And then you keep doing that until you win. So don't give up on yourself and don't give up on the client. It took me 7 years to win PetSmart. I kept them for 7 years. They spent $2 million a year with me. So that's just the way that sales works. So just that's the nature.
Great. Thanks so much, Andrew. And then I think Megan also asked something along those lines. I hope that helped out. We had another one come in. It was kind of more from a leadership perspective when you were covering off on motivating teams. I also saw some really great chats. So awesome to see our audience kind of sharing what's worked for them as a sales leader. But she asked, in your experience, what specific motivational approach or strategy has yielded the most significant positive impact on sales performance?
The thing that I would tell you that I believe matters. So if you're a money-oriented person, so you're money motivated, then money will motivate you. If you're a helper and you just really like people and you like helping people, the opportunity to do that will motivate those people. If you're a sales leader, one of the things that you really need to do in coaching is find out what these things are that people really are motivated by. I'll tell you a story. There was a guy who showed up at our outbound conference, and he told me he quit his job because his sales manager didn't know that he had 3 children, and he was doing everything for his 3 children. And once this person didn't know that he had that, after he'd worked for him for 5 years, he didn't know this. Bad coach for sure. He quit and went and got another job where somebody cared about who he was and what his motivations were. So I would tell you, look inside of yourself for what is your motivation. If it's money, don't feel bad that you're a money-oriented person and you're motivated. If that's something happened in your young life that made you that way, but I would not say don't try to suppress those things. Be motivated by whatever motivates you. And as a leader, talk to those things that your sales force actually is motivated by. It's not always motivation by money. Some of it's by just feeling like they have impact on people and that they're doing good work and other things, or they feel like they're part of a team.
Great. Yeah. I'm definitely lucky in the fact that I've had managers that understand that about me and are able to motivate me. So really appreciate the insight and the anecdote as well there, Anthony. We had another one, and I know we've touched on it in previous webinars. So I thought this one was interesting. I'm so sorry if I butcher your name, but I believe it's Junaid. They asked, how can one handle rejection when it's not due to the quality of work, but rather the pricing, especially considering there are numerous off-the-shelf companies offering more affordable rates?
Okay, yeah, price is always going to be a consideration from anybody who's buying. So let me give you a couple of ideas about this. If you have the higher price than your competitors, and it sounds like you do, here's what I can tell you. When you sit down and you have the first meeting, so you're in discovery, you've gotten your first meeting, I would disclose very, very early that I have a higher price. So I'm not going to say we're a lot more expensive. I'm going to say something like, you're probably going to find out we're about 8 to 9% higher than most of the other groups that you might look at. And I want to share with you how our model is different and how we make different investments so that we make sure you don't have any concessions that you get with people who don't spend enough money to avoid those concessions. So my job as your salesperson here is to help you understand why you would spend 8 or 9 cents more on every dollar and how it's going to lower your cost. So I'll be responsible for doing that while we're going through this conversation together. And at the end of it, I think it'll make sense to you. Now, here's what I want you to know about this. If you disclose it at the end of the conversation and they now see that you are higher than everybody else, now you're on defense. I don't want you to be on defense. I want you to be on offense. I want you to be saying, this 8 or 9 cents is the difference between having a higher cost or a lower cost. So the price is a little higher, but the cost will be far less because of the investments that we make. And now I have the whole sales conversation to have this conversation instead of trying to prevent not getting the deal because I'm higher and they didn't know it until the end of the conversation.
That's some great tips right there. I wanted to look through a couple more of these here, Anthony.
This is the kind of thing that you learn when you get it wrong.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. But as we say, like, as you said, learn from the negative experiences and try to draw something positive from it. There was an interesting one. I'm not sure if they're relating it to being a seller and selling to a client, or if this is something maybe happening internally at their org. So I'll kind of leave that up to you. But it came through from Diane, and she asked, how would you best advise to deal with the concerns expressed to higher level executives that go unresolved, even after numerous attempts to find remedies?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to tell you, I've had a number of people that were over me, CEOs, senior leaders, and I think it's really, really difficult what you're sharing here. I've said that something needs to change. They're not willing to change. What I would probably do is try to get one of them to give me 25 minutes alone so that I could express my concerns and what kind of impact it's going to have, not only on me, but on the results of the company and the results of other people who are going to be having the same situation that you have. So I would try to do that personal. I would try to do it face to face if I can. And I would try to do it in a private situation so that I'm not going to have the leader think that I'm putting them on trial in front of other people. So I would try to do this personal and talk to them about what it means to you. None of these are easy conversations. If you're conflict averse, it's harder to do this. If you're okay having a little bit of conflict, I would engage in this and try my best to get some help for whatever you need help with. And if you want to send me a note and give me more, like you can go to thesalesblog.com. If you send me something, I'll try to give you better. If you give me more of the scenario, I'll tell you what I might do for a strategy to do better.
Yeah, thanks for taking that one. I thought that was really intriguing. I've never seen kind of a question pop up like that with our session. We had another one just come in from Glenn. They asked, what is a positive voicemail to leave a client? So I'm assuming they potentially, want the call back to book the meeting. What are your thoughts there, Anthony?
I think a lot about the voicemail, specifically because they get a commercial from me. So mine would sound like this, Glenn. It would say, hey, it's Anthony Iannarino. Glenn, I'm so sorry that I missed you again today. I will try to do better and catch you in the future. I do want to ask you for 25 minutes so I can give you an executive briefing on the trends and forces that are harming the industry that you're in right now. And I would love to share with you what we see working right now and what we see not working. And I will take it upon me to call you before the end of the week to ask you again for that meeting. And if you need anything before that, I'll send you an email so you can always have my phone number. I'm going to be as positive as I can. I'm not discouraged. I'm just generally not discouraged. It's a game. And the game is, can you create enough value that I can say yes to a meeting? So you heard me try to explain what I'm going to do. I'm going to not only show them the executive briefing on what's going on in their industry, but I'm also going to tell them what's working and what's not working. And that's me trying to give them value that they say, I would take that conversation. But I won't take the conversation where Anthony tells me about his company, tells me about his clients, tells me about his solutions, and then pitches me and asks me what my problem is. That's what they're afraid of. So if you can avoid that and give them a better pitch for why they should meet with you, you'll have a better shot at getting a meeting.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for answering that one. We have time for a couple more. I'm just keeping track of where we're at, but Ryan asked something intriguing here, Anthony. First off, he starts off by saying, lots of great info here. Thank you. These are fantastic for people who are self-aware and want to improve. What strategies or tactics can someone seeking positivity implement when those around them are the ones choosing the negativity? And then adds a layer, the complexity is that you are unable to just walk away due to the nature of the client relationship.
It's a client or it's internal?
It says nature of relationship. I would assume maybe client, but if not, I'll let you kind of speak to which one you believe there.
I think internal is more likely than a client. You could have a difficult client. The call of the question here is, how do you deal with this? One of the things that I would tell you is that if you decide that you're going to respond to negativity by feeling negative, you will become increasingly more stressed. You'll have greater anxiety. You will become more negative. And if that continues to happen, over time, you might have a victim mindset. This is all the science that's in the book of Negativity Fast, even though it's not really a science book. It's more of a self-help book. But the more that you are negative and the more that you interpret things negative, the more you will become negative. And so I will tell you something that I didn't know, is that the more that you are negative, the more that you're going to be negative, and then you can end up, I'm not suggesting that you're going to have this happen to you, but the research says over time you can have real mental health issues from being negative, and that negativity can get stuck with you, and it can keep you in that. And I know a whole bunch of people who, if I gave them $1,000, they'd still be negative. They're just negative people. And I would try to do my best to surround myself with other people who are positive. And if you hang around more positive people and you're a positive person, everything would be a whole lot better for you. So don't fall into the rejection trap or this person's negative. Let them be negative. And I've already said here that if you complain all the time, you can have your hippocampus shrink and make it harder for you to think well and also to solve problems. And that's what we do in sales. We solve problems. So try to just maintain your own positivity. That's probably the best thing you can do.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for some of those insights there. We have time for just one last question. And for folks that are still with us who have posed one, if we didn't get around to it, Anthony does get all of these after the event, and he'll be sure to follow up with you. But we had Michael ask, I work with a doer-seller model, and a lot of the folks are awesome to work with, but are just new to sales and seem to have impatience with the sales process. What are some tactics to change their mindsets?
I would tell them this. If I was their sales manager, this is what I would say. Your client is trying to make a rare decision that has a really important outcome. They need you to go slow with them and make sure that they understand what they need to know. They need you to help them understand why you should do this thing instead of this, instead of that thing. You need to spend time with them, making sure that they're confident and certain. And so don't worry about the speed of the sales process. Make sure that the client has everything that they need so that they can say yes and sign a contract and become your client. I would never try to go faster than my client can go, because if I go faster than them, then I'm going to leave them in the dust. And then they're going to think, well, Anthony didn't really help me very much. He was kind of in a hurry. So don't ever let anybody think that you're in a hurry to get away from them when they're your prospective client. You want to give them time. If you want it to go faster, try to get them to the certainty faster, which means teach them everything that they need to know to make the best decision for their business. That's what our job is.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony, for answering those questions. Again, we'll be sure to send these over to Anthony, and he'll follow up on any of the ones that we weren't able to get around to today. With that, I just wanted to give a big thank you to Anthony for joining us today, as well as a big thank you to the rest of our audience for coming and tuning in on the negativity fast. Again, there is a link in the resources tab if you'd like to go ahead and purchase a copy there. I read it, really easy read, and really great tactics at the end of each chapter on how you can kind of start this negativity fast. I wanted to also remind our audience that we will be sending out the on-demand recording of this presentation within a couple days. So, you know, if you want to revisit or share that out within your networks, that's going to be available for you. And thanks again for everyone tuning in. And until next time, we'll see you all soon.